that part.
Welcome to Politic'in East of the River.
With community meets strategy.
Culture meets accountability. And the people finally gets the microphone. I'm excited to be here today. You know, today we get the chance to interview someone who I've been knowing for a while in the community, who's been making a difference, but not only that, who's running for mayor. This is a person who lives east of the river, so I always love on Politic'in East of the River to have someone who is, you know, from our side of the block, right? Not only that, but she does a lot of work to make sure that justice is not only taking place east of the river, but around the city, especially when it comes to Black folks and brown folks.
Absolutely. So I know I had the pleasure of meeting and learning about you and your work as you started collecting your signatures for mayor. I definitely signed the petition. So also excited to have you here and just learn about, as I've been learning about like how you've been keeping Black and brown people safe and how you've been fighting against the system. And I learned so much just from hearing you on the forum at 3DC. I'm like, wow, I'm really loving what you're talking about. So thank you. I think it's so good for you to be here, for people to learn more about who you are and what you do in community.
No, and thank you all for having me. This is part of the democratic process where people get to hear from us, and not all forums let me on or let me speak. And so people who are watching your podcast are going to be like, okay, yeah, there she is, because from PVC to today, you know, I've been on only a few stages or only a few places have let me speak outside of the courtroom. So you all are doing the people justice by having me on.
Word. Without further ado, everyone, the lovely lady that we have with us today, her name is Yaida Ford. Yaida. Oops, correction. Yaida Ford. I actually like Yaida better than just Yaida. So thank you for correction.
That's what my dad picked it. Yes, thank you.
I love that too. Word. So let the folks know a little bit about you.
So for people who don't know me, my name is Yaida Ford. I'm a civil rights trial lawyer here in DC. I'm admitted in 9 different courts. Most of my police misconduct work is here in the district. I also represent tenants associations. So a lot of housing issues, housing condition issues, tenants being arrested for trying to organize in their buildings, all of that comes across my desk. And just happy to be chosen to do this work. It is not an easy job. It's not a glamorous job. I didn't pick it for either one of those reasons. I picked it, you know, I went to Howard Law School in DC, and so I chose to, I wrote in my journal, you know, after graduating, get sentimental. So I said, I want to help the defenseless, not knowing that would lead me to a career in civil rights where I'm representing families who really have no voice. And they're fighting the very government to whom they pay taxes. So that's where I ended up. And God has led me here. It has been a successful career, but success has a two-edged sword, and I think we'll get into that today. But you know, if you don't know my work, Deon K, one of our Ward 8 sons, was murdered by a police officer, Kevin Sherd. He was murdered in Ward 4, but he lived in Ward 8 with his father. Now there's so many others that I can, Diamond Rest. There were a lot of them. I won't name all those names, but you could also look me up on my firm's website and on social media and find out more about me and what I do. But I'm happy to be here.
Word. It's so funny. I always tell people to watch your words because, you know, I was doing this whole healing energy. But when you speak to God, when you speak to Spirit and say, this is what I want, you have no idea the vastness that's inside of it, right? Like even me being here, like, that's what I said I'm gonna do, and then you be in it, you know. So I'm excited that you wanted to show up for those who was defenseless.
Yeah.
You know, especially in DC, especially coming from Howard, there are a lot of people who choose to leave DC, choose to leave east of the river.
Yeah.
You know? So the fact that you said, hey, I'm going to be here, I'm going to take what I have, and I'm going to reapply it to the people, I think that's very beautiful.
Yeah. No, it is a choice. And I say some people choose to leave. Some people are forced out because of cost. And so some people migrate east of the river because it's more affordable. And, you know, for me, east of the river, I just couldn't imagine living in any other ward right now. I just couldn't. I have definitely worked before becoming a trial lawyer. I worked for Jim Graham. He was a council member in Ward 1. I just remember saying Ward 1 is too crowded, man, and like too many rats, like too much going on.
Talk about that, because we don't have rats
We
east of the
don't-
river.
we
Whatever
don't
y'all
have
got
rats.
going on
We don't have
across, that stuff be strange. I be in over like, what's that? We
It's too
forgetting.
close together, all the overbuilding in Ward 1.
I always thought it was because of the restaurants. So they have
That
so many more
too.
restaurants uptown.
And the
Like,
restaurants are close to.
Yeah.
No, that's a real thing. The food
Yeah.
access.
Well,
thing
let us
is-
stay over there.
But
Okay.
we live in a food desert, so the rats aren't coming up.
They don't got nothing to eat.
Yeah, they don't have anything. Yeah, that's true.
I just want to ask you though. So, what made you run for mayor? What made you decide to?
Man. Wow. Okay. So, one of the cases that I have, I represent parents of special needs children against DC Public Schools, and maybe it was in 2020, right before COVID. I got a call from an attorney. He said, "I want you to take a look at these cases." I said, "What cases?" He said, "Yaida, I'm getting calls every day." His name's Nigel Atwell. He said, "I'm getting calls every day about people's autistic children being abused in school." I'm like, "What do you mean abused?" And he was like, "Some of the kids are being force-fed." You know, I'm like, "What do you mean force-fed?" He was like, no. Teachers' aides are like stuffing food and they're choking children. You know, and I'm like, immediately I was like, they're not trained. Like, I immediately knew that's what the issue was. And he said, "There's a school in Ward 7. I said, what school? He said, River Terrace. And he said, "It is exclusively a special needs school. It's the only one in all of DC." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "A lot of these incidents are coming from River Terrace." And so the first case I got was a little girl who was locked in a cabinet. And she has very complex, severe intellectual disabilities. She's missing the middle of her brain. So she can formulate, words, but she is extremely, she has a very complex disability. And so she was able to bang on a door in the cabinet to let somebody know that she was in there. She didn't want to be in there. And, the teacher tries to open the door, it's locked. And this kid is in here. And so the teacher, is like, who locked this girl in here? And so the teacher's aide comes out and he's like, "Oh, I put her in there." And she said, I need you to give me the key. And he didn't want to give the key up. No, he didn't want to give the key up. We have the testimony now of it. And so they eventually got the girl out. And the police were called, he was sent home and all this. And then mom pulls up to the school. It's summer now, right? Because it happened at the end of the school year. Fall comes, mom pulls back up at the school, thinking the guy's gone. She pulls up, little girl's getting ready to get out, walking the girl in the school. Little girl sees the teacher's aide who did this, urinates on herself, has a nervous reaction to his sight. And mom at this point isn't sure what's happening, but the little girl she's somewhat verbal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's the one, she was able to identify him. And mom went ballistic, as any parent would, like, why is he still here? And come to find out, and I don't know if this is a Washington Teachers Union who's responsible for this, but you can't fire these people. Principal said she said she wanted to fire him, recommended he be terminated. He was not. And we have a teacher union, right? And so that was case number 1. So then next call was a parent of a child with a broken femur. Came home. Let me just say, this child is in a wheelchair. She cannot talk at all, and she uses a feeding tube. So she's very, she's on the highest end of the spectrum of disabled. Like, if there was a scale from 1 to 10, she's definitely a 10. Okay, because she can't talk, she can't feed herself, she can't. And so she comes home from school. Her mom's a nurse, and little girl can't talk. She gets off the bus, And her mom looks at her face, says, "What's wrong with my daughter's face?" She said her daughter was blinking a lot. And she was like, "My daughter's in pain." So you think about when you're a parent, how tuned into your kid you have to be when they can't talk to you, right? They can't cry and they can't scream and they can't say, "Mommy, teacher so-and-so did this to me." So she immediately rushes her daughter to Children's. She says, "Something is wrong with my baby." And they do an x-ray, broken femur. This is the strongest bone in the human body. And so I said, "Okay, Lord." So I get several more calls like this. We put them all together and create multi-plaintiff litigation. It's not a class action. Sometimes people say that, but to have a class, a judge has to agree that it's a class. And so anyway, we put it together as a multi-plaintiff litigation. Channel 9, I think, covers it. Actually, Fox 5 covers it. Now, the day that I'm doing this, I'm at Fox 5. I'm at the moms of the broken femurs. I'm at her house. Broken femur, the child with a broken femur. Fox 5 is there with me. He gets a call. Dion K is just murdered by a police officer that same day. So these things are happening on the same day. I am not Dion K's lawyer at that time. I was in the DCPS thing like by 9 months. Dion is killed. Fox 5 reporters like, "Oh, I gotta run," but they're the first to air the DCPS story. Channel 9 calls me 2 weeks later. "We need to do an exclusive sit down with how many parents can you give us?" I'm like, "I'll get you as many as I can." So we do the sit down, and little girl locked in closet. Her mom comes, and then another mom whose kid comes home. She picks him up from school, busted front lip. And he's pointing. He's nonverbal, but he's pointing. And he's got a twin brother who says, "Teacher so-and-so did it." Twin brother's verbal, but they're both special needs. Mm-hmm. That mom comes on, and Channel 9 does this exclusive interview with the parents, right? And at that point, the phones start now blowing up with parents from not just River Terrace, and from all over DC schools. So we're like, "No, something happened to my kid too." And I'm like, "Jesus."
It's so funny because I was thinking about the incident with my son when he was in daycare 3 years old. And I had to go get him. When I went to pick him up, like, he was hysterical, he was crying. And one of the daycare members, he was also in a wheelchair, and he kept saying that he pushed him. And he kept trying to say that he didn't, but my son was like, "No, he did it. He did it."
Yeah.
And they terminated my voucher the very next day. I was already going to go to Austin, but they had terminated my voucher before I could even switch his daycare out of the daycare. So it's definitely happening in the most vulnerable communities.
Yeah, in the most vulnerable communities.
And for people who oftentimes don't even know that they can advocate for themselves.
Yeah. Or they don't know how to do it internally. So DCPS has a system called, there's a grievance process, right? So in the case we asked for, I said, "I know that if there's 5, if I got 5, and I got all those phone calls, and I put in some of them statute of limitations passed, because parents don't know when something happens to your kid. You got to notify the district. You got 180 days to do it, right, before you sue. They don't know that. And I think whenever an incident report is done on a kid, a parent should get a letter. You got 180 days if you want to file a legal action. This is the law. Make sure you contact Office of Risk Management. Parents should get a letter. That's one of the first things I said after taking these cases. They're not notified of their rights, because then the right to sue is gone. It's gone, right? So I had to turn parents down. Like, it's too much time has passed. They did not know. And so the other thing we noticed is that not all the teachers do incident reports when they witness things. So broken femur girl, no incident report, none.
I still think broken femur is wild when you're in a wheelchair.
Nobody knew. And thankfully her mom's a nurse. God is watching. Mom came to her deposition, child's mom. DC Attorney General's office has taken her deposition. "Well, how do you know what happened to your child?" Mom said, "I'm a nurse." Right. And she said, "I have to train them on how to change her diaper, because she can't go to the bathroom, right, and how to take her out of her chair, put her on the changing table, and how to change her." She said, "I have to train them on how to do it. I know that somebody dropped this girl somebody dropped my daughter. And they didn't want to say that. So they called mom that day. Oh, she's not feeling well. You might want to come get her. Instead of calling 911, instead of doing the incident report, instead of doing what they were supposed to do, because nobody wanted to be responsible for dropping the girl, right? And the girl was clearly in distress because they said she's vomiting, she's doing this, she's doing this. You know you dropped her. Somebody dropped her. You know, just say it happened. But that was that right there. And so she may have no recourse. It's been 5 years. This case is still open on my docket. The problem now, and this is what led me running, is that I had a chance to speak with the chancellor, took his deposition. The government, Brian Schwab's office, was trying to stop me from taking this man's deposition. I said, I had to get a court order to take his deposition. And that's just when somebody sits here just like me and you and I interview him and there's a court reporter typing. So you can't get out of this if later we go to trial. Here's your testimony. And you can't change it now. So that's what I was doing, a deposition. And I said, I asked him, I said, who do you feel is responsible for all of this? And I said, does the buck stop with you? He said, yeah, it does stop with me. I said, tell me, because he was contacted directly by the parents. I said, did you follow up with any of the staff that you assigned to contact parents? Because parents had gotten no answers. And he said, no, I did not follow up with my staff. And I said, why not? I said, why not? And he said, well, I trust my staff. And I said, okay, but a kid came on with a broken femur and she's in a wheelchair. And I said, you wouldn't just think to say, hey, this case, what did we actually do to resolve this? And he said, no. And then I pointed to the fact that River Terrace, there was supposed to be a meeting between his office and the principal. The meeting never happened, right? And I asked the principal, I said, did the chancellor ever reach out to you? No. I said, nobody from his office, after all these incidents happened at your school. She said, no, never.
And then it's so crazy because then you have your chancellors and your people who's trying to run for office, and we don't even know this type of stuff.
Listen, talk about it. Don't even have a track record. Trying to say, I've been in the school board for this long. Meanwhile, they dropping balls.
Big one. Yeah, I was going to say major balls were dropped here. And so when I decided to run, I told my clients, I said, I just need your permission to talk about this case. And they said, you got it. And one of the first things I said at Free DC was, and I thought about it and I didn't want to, because politics, there's things I can say as a lawyer that I can't say as a candidate. But one of the first things, it just came out. I wasn't trying to say it, but I said, we do not have a good chancellor. And now he's resigning. He is resigning.
What was it, clock it? However y'all do it these days. Whatever the thing is, there we go.
He's resigning. But it took some exposure. I mean, I had to run in order for that issue to be exposed. So now everywhere I go, people ask me about that. But but schools are under mayoral control since Adrian Fitty.
Mm-hmm.
He created the chancellor.
Okay.
We didn't have this before.
Right.
So it started with Michelle Reed. And so it's become somebody who's more powerful than the mayor when it comes to education. He makes more money than the mayor, certainly. And the principals, the superintendents, all of these people answered to him. And so people are afraid to speak out when they see something in a school. They're afraid to say, hey, Chancellor, we're not getting enough training. We're not getting enough. People are afraid to do that because they're afraid to be fired because there's no accountability. And the same thing with the mayor. So you have principals now who they make good. Now, let me just say this. DC pays well. And teachers are paid well. Principals are paid well. Principals, there's some $200,000. But you have principals who, if teachers complain and say, hey, our kids need more reading specialists, because, our kids are not meeting benchmark. Right? I've said that too. And I'm the only candidate that has said that. And I don't sit on the council. I'm like, you all have access to this data, but you all are not saying anything about it because you're protecting the dangerous system that is failing our kids. Yeah. So when I started saying the statistics, none of the other candidates wanted to do it. I mean, let me tell you how I got the statistics. I'm not supposed to have them, but because I represent teachers, before I ever did the special needs kids, I used to represent. We had a lot of grade tampering going on, so I was representing educators who had been asked to change grades and do different things here, and which is another part of the corruption, right? They were changing, and this is it. This is charter school, okay, which is also under mayoral control. So so a teacher, basically said, I'm going to give you access. I'm not supposed to do it, and she said she brought them to me. Didn't want to email them, couldn't show no trace, right? But she said this feels like justice for me because I know you're going to speak. No other candidate did she go to. Because I don't have anything to do. I have a trial practice. I don't worry about, DC's a strange place because people are so afraid to be candid about things, things that really matter. It's strange.
But I think but I feel like that's the reason why a lot of the change makers who did good in DC was not from DC, because they almost wasn't connected to that inner DC BS.
Yeah, the nativism that kind of goes on.
We kind of come and be like, this is BS. Let's
politicking, right? This is politicking east of the river. So I didn't have that fear because I'm like, I have a trial practice, so not winning doesn't mean anything for me. For some of these career politicians, not winning means this could be the end of my political career if I say something. But what matters more? Letting people know our kids are this is 3/4 of our population, and most of these kids live east of the river. So that to me seems like you would air that. And frankly, if you sat on the council, listen, education is over the committee of the whole, so all the council members are responsible for this data. You know what I mean? And so it's been rough to be a truth speaker, and I think that's why some of the forums didn't let me on after Free DC. Now some forums are like, "Oh, you coming?" Council for Court Excellence. Shout out to Misty and everybody who works at Council for Court Excellence. There were judges and leaders in there, and I said the statistic there, 75%, and people were like aghast, like 75%. I'm like, yeah, and they're like, how come we can't find this anywhere on DCPS's website? The mayor will never tell you this because then it's a sign of her failure because schools are under her control. So
we got connected with this one place that does like the data around the literacy east of the river, because when we do something called the Week of Healing, and one of the days was sitting from illiteracy. Because we were finding out that our literacy rate for our especially our young boys, were very, very low. And a lot of times what I'm learning is like, it's not because the kid's not smart. A lot of them just have mental health and behavioral issues that's not being dealt with, so they can't sit in the classroom long enough tomorrow. So it's
but it's also,
they're going to special needs, and then they're not even really
getting what they need there. And it's a training issue too, because I had an educator come up to me yesterday. I spoke at a church yesterday. And shout out to pastors who are actually letting candidates come speak, because that's even a hard thing now. But she came, a teacher, she taught for 60 something years, and she said, "Miss Ford, can I tell you?" She said, "I've never lost a kid." And she said, you have to reach the kids first before you can teach them. That's what she said to me. She said, they got to know you care about them first. Once they know you care, you got those kids. Even the ones who are the humdingers. She called them humdingers. She said, I had some humdingers. But because I cared, she said they opened up to me. And I never lost one.
Word. The passion to make a difference. I feel like I'm here running because I always say, if the math was math, then algebra wouldn't be needed in the race, right? But things are not adding up. There are people in place. There are people who've been around for a while, but there's also a lot of passiveness when it comes to grave injustice that's happening around. It's almost like folks get comfortable they achieve whatever they achieve, get comfortable, and then forget. So making sure that things are equitable around here. So the idea that you are fighting the causes for folks, who normally don't have a voice, uh, in DC, and the fact that you're not afraid to have to speak and say some hard, difficult things to people. We need somebody with a mouth. The reason here that people get the microphone. We need somebody who ain't afraid of a microphone. No matter of fact, their voice is so good that even without the microphone, it's still getting around. So yeah, I appreciate the fire, that you have, and also too just experiencing your community and just witnessing your passion within itself. It's good to have you in the race.
Well, thank you. It's been the race has taught me two things. I see why good people do not participate in politics or run for office. I see it. I see it now. I didn't see it before. I see it now. But I also see why good people should do it. I see why they don't, but I see why they should.
And I feel like I've been the same way with, I was saying a couple of episodes ago that I wasn't always into politics. I didn't always pay attention to politics. I didn't really care. But the more I started to get into the community and real estate spaces, I started to see inequities in our communities. And I started to also advocate about those inequities to try to get the council to understand with the whole gun violence prevention thing and how that was coming into the community. But I had a question for you about just like with a lot of the cuts that's happening, right? And with DC and robbery housing, for instance. And the fact that we wasted so much money with robbery housing. They're putting families in units they can't afford, only for them to, once the program is over, have to go back into the shelter and do the process all over again. Is that my question is like with these different programs and how they've affected families and they keep like them out of crisis.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Like is what can people do about these programs that the government like what can people do?
This is where I think the community needs a voice at the table as to how the program should be run. Because if you haven't been in a housing crisis and you haven't had to go through the program, you don't know where the underbelly of that program. And so for me, and I've said it, initially when I said I was going to run, I said, you guys, we need a housing policy council that has tenants on the council, and landlords too, and even the small and pop landlords who want to rent, but there's so much red tape, they just want to rent a room out. That's all they want to do. But now you got to have a business license to do it. Now you got to have, and people, it's a lot for folks. And people just want to rent a room, so can we not match these people together? Somebody who provides decent housing and somebody who just wants to pay rent. Like, let's do it. I think that the council should have the people who've been in the system on the council say, look, this is what's wrong with it. And the decision makers should hear that. They should have to before they can revamp a program. Don't create another program without listening to people who have been through that program and who know how it's broken. Don't do another one. Right? And so that's one of the first things that I wanted to do with the landlord-tenant situation. And I represent tenants associations. So one of the crises outside of rapid rehousing, and the reason why rapid rehousing exists is because we don't, and I don't know why DC, well, actually I do know why DC won't do it. But some of these commercial landlords have a large number of vacancies, particularly in like communities in Ward 6, 7, and 8. Ward 3 is starting to have this problem too, believe it or not. And they will get cited by Department of Buildings, but they will never have to pay a fine. DC only collects 1% of the fine. And I think the reason for that is some of them are already in the pockets of the mayor, so they don't have to. And when you have all those vacancies, then there's less of a supply. So the demand seems like it's still really high, right? You can't bring the cost down because you can't count those vacant units. And you've got landlords sitting with 60 vacant units in a building, 30 vacant units in a building, and nobody's forcing them to repair those units so that people can move in. Then rapid rehousing becomes this cycle of failure. When there's 60 units over here, that we can just put those families in at a market rate that they can afford, and they have stable housing. But that, as my friends from Mississippi would say, is too much like right. But you need somebody with a right. Not sounding like religious and all of that. But you have to have a certain mindset towards humanity in order to do right by people.
Come on. If you don't
Call it
care, there's no
compassion,
heart.
but there's just something unrighteous about governing in a way that wastes taxpayer money and still doesn't serve people.
There is something
Still doesn't serve the
unrighteous
people.
about governing. How was that sentence? I wanted to quote that shit. That thing was just what, and wasting people's money. I think that's just
And still not serving people.
that's still not serving people.
Yeah, because all of it's rapid housing is expensive, but people still end up at the bottom.
Or in situations I know, and historic and Acosta, when you mentioned about how they have to pay 1%, there's been plenty of buildings that we've had to speak about, and we got here and we pull up these things. This person has already been fined. They've been fined this many times for this. They're still not fixing the buildings. They're still not making anything.
And can you imagine building more housing in an environment like that? Developers know they can do it. Why are we talking about? And that's why I'm listening to candidates like, I'm going to build. You can't enforce the laws against the landlords that you do have.
Okay.
And so now you want to build more? No. And then
Now we got buildings falling off.
No. Even the new ones they're building, they're supposed to have like 30% affordable housing. But they weren't enforcing that. We had people going down to testify about that. They applying for these new buildings, trying to get in them, and they can't. They playing games. They don't have no vacancies. So
It's yeah. I mean, the system is starting to implode, though, and the people have asked for something new, and so we can't afford another status quo election. We can't afford it. But the real people have to step up and run, so that people aren't feeling like they're forced to choose between, lesser of two evils, or Tweedledee and Tweedledum, or I don't really, or I'll just stay home because I don't really like anybody. It's that you can't.
That part.
We owe it to ourselves to step up and run, especially those of us who know something about governance and know something about legislation and know, I mean, to get to this point, it took a lot because I'm stepping away from my livelihood to do it, and so and I, every day I'm like, hey, you're stepping away from your livelihood to do this. Yeah, I mean, and I that was a hard decision to make. Actually, it was an easy decision to make. It's a hard decision to walk out every day because of the demands on, number one, there's a protest today, right? Dion K. And I'm fighting that. Yeah, I'm fighting that. And then tomorrow I'm in federal court somewhere, right? But I've largely stepped away. I'm not picking any new cases. Haven't for 6 months. And that is definitely has a financial impact on my livelihood and my staff and all of that. And I feel like there's a reckoning, that you have to make, and that you come to when you decide that you're going to walk the walk. Politicking is easy, honey, but walking that walk, but you can sleep at night. You can, what I mean? People actually respect you.
Mm-hmm.
People trust you. And so that is an intangible dividend. Money can't buy respect or trust, as we've seen every day. So money can certainly run a campaign and whatever, get your commercials out there, but it's not and it can't buy votes per se, right? We see how much, like, billions of dollars people are putting in elections right now, and sometimes they still lose, after putting in billions, because people want the power.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you going to do with it when you get it? Once it's yours, can the people trust that you will do right by them with the power that you have?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like even with the little bit of power that I do have, I feel like I've always shifted it back to community. Every time things have tried to shift on me, I've always shifted back to community because it's not about me or what I'm bringing into with the community. It's about the community as a whole. And one thing I learned that government will do is like they'll come in the community and they'll cause division by putting certain things in place or calling certain organizations to the table, but not calling other organizations, although they've been doing the work longer and have more impact. I saw that.
Mhm.
And I was like, I even would tell some of my comrades, like, yeah, let's not let them pin us against each other. Let's not let them make us think that we're in competition because we're not. It's an illusion. They want us to think that so the work can't get done.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a very interesting observation because you're not deceived. It's
that discernment. I pray for it at the beginning of this journey.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
You gotta have it because they'll play on your emotions. They'll play on your mind. They'll play on anything they can. They will do it.
Yeah. So the fortitude. So you have to have it too. You know, to put one foot in one of the other and keep walking the journey out.
Yeah. I want to get into the Dion case.
Yeah.
Case. I know you're having a protest today.
Well, not me, but you know, the community is.
Yes, we are actually.
Yeah, we do.
So why are we protesting?
Yeah. So Dion was killed, like I said, the day I was doing the interview with the special needs case. He was killed September 2nd, 2020, a couple months after George Floyd. So everything was on high. Emotions were on high that summer, Freedom Summer. And so Dion was killed, and there was an immediate response about the recklessness of the officer's actions, but there was no accountability. He wasn't charged criminally, and the Department of Justice said, "Look, we're not going to do anything here." I went with Miss K. Somebody from the community introduced me to her. I was not connected to Miss K, and a community member was like, "I want to introduce you to Dion's mom," and she had gone to Ben Crump and some other lawyers or whatever. And so I looked at her, I saw the footage, and then the media was killing Dion and his reputation. And Southeast came with a gun, and people were just like, but the community still showed up and protested that night that he was killed. Afterwards, though, it got quiet and she was alone. And I said, here's what I'm going to do. I said, I will go with you to the Department of Justice to have that meeting, because they meet with you and they say, we're not going to press charges, but they show you what evidence. So I said, this is what I'll agree to do for you right now. And when I left the meeting, I was I was pissed off. And I said, Yaida, do you really want to get into this case? Because it's rough. You know, you could see a gun. But the community kept saying, he threw it. And I said, I won't really be able to know that until I actually take the case and have access to the private parts of this file. Right. So I have to take that risk of signing her up, spending the money, right? And then asking for all of the files and all of the records. And I won't know any of this. So I got into it. And, Dion, we won so 5 years later, fast forward, last summer, coincidentally, almost a month before Dion's death, we won the case, July 31st. Dion's birthday is in August. Okay. So I just love divine timing in the way the Lord moves. So July 31st, we're there. And then Dion's birthday was like August 18th or something. And then September 2nd was the death. So 30 days to pay a judgment. So July 31st, judgment is entered August 1st. By September 2nd, Natasha K. finally gets restitution for a child. Now you can't put value on dollar value on a life. $655,000 was what the jury awarded. They came to a compromise. Okay. By September 2nd, 5 years later, that money was going to be in her hand. And I was like, Lord, I love the way you move, man. All that fasting and praying. I said, we did that. So then August 28th, I get a notification from the Brian Schwab's office. They're asking for a reduction in the verdict. They think that it's too much money. Or if the judge won't reduce it, they're asking for a new trial.
Real quick, where does that money come from?
It comes from the city's coffer. So it's tax money, basically.
Well, but which pot? Does it come from the OAG pot?
Yeah, there's an OAG pot.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a settlement and verdicts pot. And so they wouldn't settle the case though, because they said it was nuisance value. And they said it in open court. They said it to the judge. I heard it. Natasha heard them say it, Miss K. Dion's father's deceased. So, this mother was there by herself and listening to them say, we think the case is nuisance value. Because the judge was like, don't y'all want to settle before we go to trial? And
so I don't know if I missed it, but y'all didn't find it out. It was that
so the officer said he pointed it at him. That's what it was. And it was chest level and he thought he was going to shoot him. But the footage showed, but we had to slow that. We had to get a video forensic analyst. We had to have him slow it down and look at it upwards. Video showed Dion released that weapon. It was flying through the air. It looked like a bird. Mm-hmm. That kid was running so fast out of that car, and he was only 100 and something pounds. He in our closing arguments, we argued the officer knew he threw it. He didn't think he was pointing, because you could not miss this skinny little kid. It landed 98 feet away from his body. So you couldn't miss a skinny kid. He had to have used all of his weight to throw that thing for it to land 98 feet away from where he fell. So the jury heard that. I'm like, you didn't think he pointed it at you. They just decide whether they believe it or not. Right. And I'm like, did he really point it, or was he reaching back and chucking this thing? Like you knew, so the jury just didn't buy the story. And then, of course, he added some stuff that he shouldn't have done. And I don't really want to say, because I don't want to help the next cop that I cross-examined. But, I'll say it off camera. But, you don't go off the script. So when you do, I'm gonna attack you.
So you say August 2025, they tried to reduce.
Yeah, so 28 days. So it's 30 days to pay. They waited till 28 days to say, hey, we want a reduction and we want a new trial. It took her, that was August, April 9th. It took her that long to make a decision. She had us in court in January, like the day after King Day. So, I'm like just aligning up the righteousness of it all. Okay. So, because I got to stay encouraged. Mm-hmm. So the day after King Day, she has us in there for an oral argument. She's like, what do you want me to reduce it to exactly? And I don't think the lawyer said anything, because there was a lot of people in the courtroom. People were online watching. And I just don't think they really wanted to say the amount that they felt his life was worth, because they knew there would be a reaction to it. So the lawyer didn't really say, right? And so she was like, well, I'm going to take this matter under advisement. 4 months later, we get a ruling. She's like, I'm not reducing anything. The case is closed. Y'all going to pay 4% interest.
Good job. I was going to ask about that. Good job. Right, good.
And unfortunately, the taxpayers has to pay it, because they didn't pay it on September 2nd like they should have. So now the taxpayer has to pay it. And she's like, bye, I'm done. April 9th, done. So I'm like, okay, great. May the 9th, that's 30 days. Ms. K finally gets, what's due her plus interest. So that brings the number up, because, people were complaining that's not enough money. Like, you guys, I can't think about it like that. It's hard to win these cases. But she will get some interest. Child, on May the 8th, this is the 29th day. And I had to reach out to Brian Schwab's office. They did not contact me. And I'm like, hey, are y'all going to file an appeal, or y'all just, where's the check? Are y'all going to send it? Are y'all mailing it? Wiring it? I'm like, basically, like, what are you guys going to do? Because May the 9th on a Saturday. It's Friday. I'm like, oh no, we have until midnight. We are going to file a notice of appeal. I said, oh. And my heart just sank, because I knew that nobody knows about this. He is running for a re-election. And to do this when you are running for like right before the election, in fact, it says to me, either this is really who you are as an AG, that you would fight Black families like this, or you are just arrogant and don't really care, about the optics of it for a Democrat, to do this. I don't know. And then he dropped the case against the Proud Boys last year, saying it was not a good use of taxpayer money. And so I was struggling. I said, so it's a better use to fight, this grieving mother like this? I think the DC taxpayer would be okay, with just paying her. I mean, because the officer, it went to trial, right? The jury said he was wrong. And it was a mostly white jury, by the way. And so what are we fighting for now? And so I was crushed to learn this, especially from an elected official that is somewhat popular in Ward 8. No, people have been rocking with him for a minute. But I'm like, does anybody know that he's doing this? And so I'm like, my spirit was vexed. And I said, this is hypocrisy. And nobody knows he's doing it. And he's banking on the fact that nobody's going to know that he did this.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow I got to find another one. And so I'm just like, people need to know this about the people that they're voting for. Because they will do something to get your vote and be present in your community. But then they will use the taxpayers' money to fight you and to fight your interests. And won't even stand up to the community. I mean, at least say why you're doing it. But to say, well, it's a legal issue, I can't talk about it. I mean, that's what he says all the time.
When I asked him about it, because as soon as I seen the post, I asked him at a meet and greet. He was like, well, the case is in litigation, so he can't talk about it, but he will say that it was behind legal eyes.
But what does that mean? And we want to know. So what do you believe as an AG? So maybe we'll ask it differently. We can't ask you about the case. What do you actually believe as an AG about police misconduct when black blood is shed in the street by one of our own officers? What exactly do you believe? Do you believe they should be held accountable, or do you believe you fight no matter what? Like you just fight for the cop no matter what at the expense of the taxpayer, right? What do you believe? And I think that's a better question that deserves an answer. And I would love to see how he would answer that question. I don't know how he would answer it. But the legality of it, I mean, so there are some legal issues, and they tell us what they are. So number one, they think it was too much. But the D.C. Court of Appeals, mind you, they made the same arguments to Judge Bozier. And, the D.C. Court of Appeals has consistently upheld verdicts of that amount. It is not 7 figures. So you're not going to win on that. Right. The other argument would be, some of these technical arguments I won't get into, but I think the case law has to support you. That's how you win. And if the judge wasn't convinced, now after the jury, she had an opportunity, she looked at the same cases you cited. They're going to cite the same cases before the Court of Appeals. Here's another thing that this does to us, and I think we need to know this, and I want to put this out there. The appeal is going to cost about $30,000. I thought it was going to be $20,000, but when I contacted appellate counsel, civil rights lawyers, there's a few of us. There's only a handful, so I know who to call. Huh? And then how much longer do y'all have to be in court? Okay, good question. It could be 3 to 4 years. Wow. So the interest. That would even. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking about the suffering of the mother, who was also told multiple times that something was going to take place, and then chosen at the last minute, the 28th day, the final day for an appeal, and now she has to go back. So when we think, I work as a death doula, so I think about bodies, energies, spirits being able to rest in peace, right? This is, we talk about the cycle of grief, the cycle of crisis. This is just like keep pumping and keep pumping and keep pumping.
Yeah. And the money, I think that the message that this sends from our AG, and this is another thing we can ask without talking about the case, what message are you sending to people when you're fighting them, relentlessly over in cases like this? I think one message is that, victims should be afraid to do this because they can't afford it. You should be afraid to fight the police when they unlawfully, seeking legal redress is not just. This is why people don't trust the system.
And this is why we get away with it, because they know we don't have the money or the resources or the sanity system enough to go.
Or the mental health, even be able to endure.
Yeah. That's it. That's a very good observation. They don't have the tenacity. And the K family is very often question, before I take a case, can a person handle what's going to come with this? Because you're going to see your kid, you're going to see the footage over and over. You're going to see it over and over. You're going to see it in court. The jury's going to have to look at it. You're going to have to look at it. if it has to go back to trial, because that's what he's asking for, she has to relive it, and then that's more cost. It's just like that. He can use taxpayer money, and AG can use taxpayer money, but resources are finite for human beings. And so yeah, the cost is going to be a cost, and I think people would see this and be like, it's not worth it. And so that then prevents people from actually seeking legal redress. But then that increases internal conflict because people are going to get it out somehow.
Yeah.
They're going to get it out somehow.
I think it's I think this conversation has just been rich, and it's clear that we need to bring you back because there's so much about everything that we can just learn about everything when it comes to stuff that's going on that we don't know about. Stuff that's going on with politicians that is seeking election, but meanwhile, the grave disjustice that they're doing, how they're causing more harm on the same community and things of that nature, right? So, wow, yeah, it's wild.
Oh, thank you, family. Yeah.
Just being a people first person, right? Because I don't even know what the name you ask you so much.
I'm a servant. I mean, I'm a servant. That's
a community leader as well.
Thank you.
Ashayo, what would you like to leave the people with in this moment?
Voting is our power. And I know it seems like after everything we talked about that does my vote really matter? It so does, because we end up with folks holding office that don't necessarily hold our values. And so please, by all means, if you're not registered to vote, please do it. Please exercise your vote. I can't tell you how to vote. Well, I can say write me in on June 16th. I can say that. But we need to increase our participation east of the river because all too often we see maybe 2 wards or 3 controlling who sits in the seat. And then that person isn't beholden to us, which is what we've seen kind of over the last decade. So not just one decade, but several, since we haven't had Mr. Berry. Please, please, please vote. And please continue to just stay grounded and be people of prayer because that's how we endure some of the very tough things that are ahead of us. And thank you both for this platform. I think it's amazing. I look forward to seeing what happens with you both. You guys are like amazing. And I'm so grateful that you asked me to be here with you today.
Shout out to it. You heard it first from Yaida Ford to go vote and to stay prayed up. I heard that part too. Yeah. Vote and stay prayed up.
God heard
Yeah.
June 8th.
Early voting has already started, so you have to vote by June 16th.
I thought June 8th is when the early voting opens up.
Okay, word. There we go. Ballots are in the mail. Early voting by June 18th, and you have to get your votes in by June 16th. Word. Again, I am Alejaibra, your DC Ward 8 Democratic Committee candidate.
And I am Charnal and Alejaibra.
Word. So be sure again to vote, and not only vote, but to use your voice, to use your tools. Yeah. Peace.
I think Brian, I'm not in the conference room too long. Brian might